leader, and entrepreneur. This is the podcast exclusively for association executives and members. Each week, Jeff interviews association executives about their victories, igniting new ideas for you to create greater value for your members. And now, Jeff Tippett.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Tippett. I'm grateful that you've joined us for today's episode of Victory by Association. Today's show is brought to you by Persuasion Publishers. Persuasion Publishers disrupts the traditional model of publishing. We empower you to get your story from idea to bookshelf in just 2 months with a high-quality product at an affordable cost. Learn more at persuasionpublishers.com and check out our show notes for the link. Today, I'm excited to welcome my special guest, Paul Comfort. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
How's your day going?
It's going awesome.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for taking time out to chat with us a little bit today and share your story, your expertise. Let's start like we always do. Tell me a little bit, just high level here, about your background in associations and what type of work have you done in the past?
Sure. So I spent a 30-year career in public transportation and government and was president of the Transportation Association of Maryland for several years and also president of the County Administrators of Maryland through the Maryland Association of Counties. So those were elected positions by my peers. While I was doing that, I had full-time positions, full-time gigs as, ended up being CEO of the MTA in Baltimore, which is the 11th largest public transit system in America. I also was an elected county commissioner and a county administrator running 2 county governments in Maryland.
Oh, my, fantastic, Paul. You're like the Wonder Man. That's fantastic. So congratulations to all that. And I would also add, hey, thanks for serving as well as spending time as an elected official. I work with a lot of elected officials. So kudos to you for doing that. Well, Paul, tell us something here, something a little interesting, maybe something that people wouldn't find on your LinkedIn profile that they might find of interest about you.
Well, 2 quick things. One, like you, I'm a pianist. Played, had a band called Sons of Thunder when I was young. We made a record and toured around Maryland. But also something I think people find interesting is my wife and I, we've been married 32 years. We have 6 children and big family for these days, and we just wanted a big family. So we've got 13 or 14 in our whole crew now with husbands and wives and all that.
All right. So Paul, I don't even know how to respond to that. Honestly, I've got 3 kids and there are days when I feel like I'm not going to make it. So kudos to you with
I got a great wife. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, talk to me a little bit about, let's begin and start this conversation a little bit about a victory or success that you've experienced, something that our audience might find value in hearing about.
Yeah, so in both positions as president of the Transportation Association of Maryland, let's start there. That's an association of all the county public transit systems in Maryland. So there's 23 counties. Each of them have a bus system of some type. And so we formed an association, and our job was to lobby the state legislature for more money, obviously, for regulations which would be helpful for us, and also for exchange of ideas, like most associations are. We had some big victories while I was there in legislation and helping medical assistance transportation, which is transportation to the doctor's office, medical appointments for people with low income, helping to make sure that was well funded in the state of Maryland. And then on to the County Administrators Association. In that role, I was able to actually travel the state and help other county governments improve their local county government. I was county administrator of Queen Anne's County and then Charles County, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., and we also were able to influence legislation and regulations that would impact county governments, to give county governments more authority over land use and not let the state of Maryland take over so much of the land use control from local governments, which they traditionally have had here in Maryland.
That's awesome, Tom. And I've had an opportunity to dip my toe in transportation just a little bit. I've led a couple of bonds here in the area, helping make sure they pass to expand transportation options in my community. So got a little feel for what you do. Well, let's pick up on just a slightly different area, something that Paul and I talked a little bit about as we were just getting to know each other before the show began today. And Paul, you mentioned that you have at some point gone through a transition and left this association world. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so now I'm vice president of Trapeze Group, which is the world's largest transportation software company. We provide all the back office software to run transit systems, That's what shows you where the bus is, on your app and all that kind of stuff, and asset management and all that. And as part of that job, they've asked me to basically serve as their industry ambassador. Having 30 years in the government and transportation industry, I now have an opportunity to travel the country and the world and speak at other associations. So I was just in Tennessee Transit Association with their keynote speaker talking about global transit trends. I also started a podcast called Transit Unplugged. It's the world's top podcast for public transportation. And I interview CEOs of transit systems, from Australia to Europe to England to Canada to all over America. I've interviewed 70 of them so far. The podcast, like yours, is available everywhere, iTunes, etc. And it's a half-hour show. And while I'm doing those interviews, because I had the experience of actually, managing I was CEO of the MTA in Maryland, which is the Maryland Transit Administration. That's the transit system in Baltimore City and the surrounding regions. I've got credibility now, taking it into these associations, speaking on stage about, how to bend the bureaucracy toward excellence. It's one of my speeches, and the 5 hidden flaws of most transit systems. I also was able to join in with a bunch of other CEOs who are friends of mine. I feel like I'm selling Ginsu knives here. and we wrote this book, Full Throttle, this last year. And it is 10 CEOs, 30 stories about how we got to the top of our industry. And so that's what I do for a living now. It's an awesome transition from, having worked for an association in a volunteer capacity as president of both of those, to now being able to visit and travel to see other associations. Just this last summer, I was in Australia speaking to the Australia Asian Transportation Association about how they could better manage their assets of their rail systems over in Australia and Asia. So it's been a great transition, and I'm having the time of my life right now.
Well, first, let me say congratulations on the book. My 3rd one's coming out next month, so I know the work that it takes to put in behind those. So,
what's your book called? Your next one?
Presidential Persuasion. And what I look at 10 presidents that exhibited different areas of persuasion and how they move the country forward. 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats. There's nothing political about the book itself. And it's designed to help leaders understand how they can lead even better, especially in this age of millennial ascendancy, automation, and artificial intelligence. Like, we're facing what leaders have never seen before. So, and thanks for letting me chat about that for a second. But
that sounds like an awesome book. I'm definitely going to get that.
I'm ready to roll this thing out. I just approved all the interior design and the cover art. So, it'll be up here real soon. I look forward to the launch. Well, Paul, what really intrigued me about our conversation earlier is this whole thing about life transitions. And I know for some people, it could be extremely scary, especially if they've been in the same space for a long time. The unknown, moving into something. But I also know that the opposite of that is knowing that you should be moving and doing something different and not doing it, and not being fully alive inside and not having that spark that we need. Tell me your story of how did you know that it was time for the change? So let's start there. What were the signals? What let you know, hey, it's time for me to move in a new direction here?
That's a great question. It's actually one that I've talked to a lot of CEOs about as part of the podcast. Just this week, I was in Las Vegas at a big conference speaking there about the future of transportation for Nevada. And I spoke to a CEO who had just retired from her job after being there many years. And we both talked about what Norman Schwarzkopf talked about when he left his job as, head of the military, which was the downshift that is required. I remember seeing him, I think it was on Tonight Show, and he said, last week I had 100,000 men working for me. This week I'm shopping at Sam's Club for myself, And we both talked about, with me at the MTA, I had $1 billion budget, 5,000 employees and contractors. And then when I left there, in the weeks that came, I almost felt like another CEO told me last week, he felt like he had PTSD after he left this high 24-hour a day, 7 days a week, high pressure situation to doing consulting work, which is basically what I'm doing now, writing and speaking. It's like being a consultant. And it is a big downshift from being on the go, on the call all the time. I think most folks realize who are sounds like you are as well, highly motivated from the inside, where, we want money, but our goal is really to make a difference in this world, not just put our head down and make it to retirement safely, and get our pension checks. For those of us who are like that, there comes a point where the challenge ceases to be there, and we sense, I need something more. And so I think that's what a lot of people have had when they make that transition. It's scary because you're used to one way of life. But I just read a quote this week from Sir Richard Branson, who I admire so much, from Virgin Trains and Virgin Airlines. And he said, nothing good ever came in his life when he was operating inside his comfort zone. He had to get outside the comfort zone. And man, the roaring 20s, 2020 is the time to let that fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love what you just said about something more. Those are just two powerful words. And I think, Paul, it's not just something more for you, which it definitely was, but it can also be something more for the group that we're leaving or whatever we're walking away from. This is not like one person loses and one person wins. There is definitely a mode here where, as you're saying, like we can move into this new calling or this new dream, this new vision. It can be more for us. It can be more for the previous group, previous person, whatever that happens to look like. And we all win and succeed in that.
That's right. New leadership is sometimes required. I think you probably are aware of this too, that different personality styles fit different phases of an organization, right?
Yes.
So as organizations go through the 4 stages of development, form, storm, norm, perform, they need different types of leaders sometimes. There are pioneers, and then there are people who are settlers, and so you're right.
Yeah, I'm that pioneer. Like I want to go to the unknown. Like I want the room to be dark when I walk in and let me figure this out. And then my struggle comes once I figure it out. It's like, all right, guys, I'm done. Like somebody else come in and have fun with this now and take it on to the next level. Well, let me ask you this: like making this decision to move on and find this new space in life. Were there fears or concerns, or anything that you dealt with like emotionally as you were pondering and considering all of this?
Yeah, sure. So I think there can be resentments as you leave about things that have happened. If for instance, you've been pushed out of a job, you can feel resentment. But I think it's important to do an internal analysis and determine what role did I play if you were pushed out. Not talking about the retirement where you retire and everybody's happy you have a party, but if you're pushed out of your position, I think you've got to have internal clarity. I'm a strong believer in being internally congruent, which is living your values. I think I'm working on I have a second book coming out, but I'm working on ideas for my third book, and it's going to be called Marauders. Taking our careers by storm. And I think in order to be a marauder, to get out there and take your career by storm, it's like living full throttle, like you and I talked about in my previous book. When you're at full throttle, sometimes you get bumped out of the boat. So you need to go back and analyze what role did I play. Maybe I wasn't as cognizant of what my boss was saying. I was so far into my own forest, I didn't see all the trees. And then I think you got to go back and make amends. I've done that once or twice where I've gone back and said to my boss, listen, man, I apologize. I see that I was out of line. I did not follow your direction the way I should have. I'm focused on what I'm focused on and not on what you wanted to, and you're the big boss. So I think we need to get all that stuff cleared up, just like people have to get cleared up their daddy issues. So then, they need to get their life resolved with their parents before their parents pass away. So they're not on this pendulum swing, constantly trying to earn their parents' favor when they're in their 50s. You don't need that. You want to be focused on your mission, like Frank Sinatra said, I want to live it my way, right? And the only way you can live my way is to not have the baggage, the emotional baggage that comes from, whatever decisions were made by other people or yourself, or reacting to trying to get someone else's favor. You need to be clear on the inside and focused on what you're doing. That's how you have unlimited power, like Anthony Robbins talks about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that with that clarity, sometimes that helps us have an awareness that maybe it's not really the best fit at this time before we find out the hard way that it's not the best fit at this time. If we have that inner clarity of the purpose and all, as you were just saying. Let me ask you this question, Paul. If you could offer any tip to an association executive right now that might be thinking, oh my gosh, something might be going awry here, or maybe on the more positive, I'm feeling something inside. I'm feeling this churning. I like what I do. I like the people that I'm working with. I like my team, but I feel like there's something new in life for me. What advice would you give that person that might be asking those questions today?
That's good. A couple of things. One is I served as a county administrator, so I worked for a board of county commissioners that were elected. I was the full-time kind of executive for the county government in 2 counties, and I liken that job like association executives do, I think, as dancing on the head of 1,000 needles, trying not to get stuck, because you've got all these different ideas. And so, you need to align yourself with the power brokers of your organization and make sure that you have what they want to do as your priority. I think that's key to longevity in any role where you work for a board. You need to, we all have our own ideas. And I think if you're a good communicator, you can talk to your board in a nice way about implementing their ideas through your fashion. That's a way to keep your job, which I've done number of times. On the other side, a couple times where I haven't kept my job, it's when, I've decided that I'm not going to compromise. I believe this is the right way to do it. And you know what? If it's not working for you, that's great. I remember one time I pushed all my papers across my desk to my boss and said, he was the president of the county commission. I said, listen, you obviously want to do this job. I don't need it. You can have it. I respect you enough to say that I don't align with your values and where you're headed in this county. And so he's like, no, I want you. I said, no, you really, well, I ended up staying a while longer, but I think your point is that there comes a point where you can see that, your gifts and your skills are bringing you before great men, the good book says. And so if you have giftings and skills and you're not aligned with the people who are over you, it's probably time to start looking. And the last piece of advice I would tell you is never tell your boss you're looking, because they'll make it very easy for you to start looking quicker. And so hold that and don't jump out of the fire into the frying pan.
Love it.
Don't jump out of the frying pan into the fire.
It's fire into the fire. And let me toss in a third one. See if you would agree with this one. Okay. Is to trust the process. That when these things start happening, sometimes we get in the middle of fear and all of this and anxiety, rather than just trusting it and resting in it. That hey, it's all going to be okay. It's going to work out. Everything is, and when I come out of it, I'm probably going to be very happy with where things land. So just trusting that process.
Yeah, I think we have to, Shakespeare or somebody said, know thyself. Mm-hmm. We have to know ourselves, what our skill sets are, what our interests are, and where our abilities and our interests align. That's your destiny. That's the sweet spot. I've taught that at high school graduations and college graduations to young people, but it's the same for those of us who are in our middle age. You've got to be in a place where when you go to work, you feel like you're getting paid for your hobby. That's the ultimate, man. And you're going to succeed there. So if you're not able to do that where you're at, start looking for a position where you can, or make your own way. There's ways where you can make your own way too. So that's what I've done. In addition to this current book, I've got a new book coming out. If you don't mind me mentioning it,
please.
It's available on Amazon. The new book is called The Future of Public Transportation.
Okay.
And it's me and 40 other top transportation leaders and CEOs and thought leaders, futurists from around the world. From, a professor of public transportation in Australia to the CEO of Toronto's Metrolinx. And we're talking about what's coming in the areas of public transportation in the next 2 to 5 years. How will autonomous vehicles affect us? How about Hyperloop? How about mobility as a service? How about just your regular bus going down the road? Is that going to improve? Are you going to be able to get it on an app and order it? And all the things that you can do on Uber and Lyft now, are you soon going to be able to do that for your bus? And the answer is yes. And I can't wait to tell you about it. It'll be out in March. The Future of Public Transportation on Amazon.
That's fantastic. Well, maybe we'll find a time down the road to come back and talk about that one as well. Paul, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I think I could sit down with you and we could just go for hours batting ideas and things back and forth. This has been a fantastic conversation. Paul, what's the easiest way for people to find you if they'd like to connect and learn a little bit more about you?
My email address is pcomfortconsulting@gmail.com. I'm big on LinkedIn. I have 15,000 followers there. Just find Paul Comfort. Or on Twitter, I'm @ComfortPaul.
Sounds great. Paul, thank you again for being my guest, and thank you all for being part of today's show. And I'll see you next week as we discover another victory by association.
You've been listening to Victory by Association with Jeff Tippett. If you've enjoyed, please subscribe, rate, and review. Be sure to check out the show notes for links relating to this episode. For information about becoming a sponsor or guest, please email podcast@jefftippett.com.